Hello YouTube Pipe community, OTC Piper with my first pipe chat devotional video that I plan to do on a monthly basis. The next one will come August 26th. And this is the first time I'm launching one of this series. Trying not to keep you too long. I do want to just kind of introduce some things about what I wanted to do. This is something that I would want to do once a month at the end of the month. The title of this devotional video comes not really from a scriptural reference, but a historical reference called A Line in the Sand. But first, let's do some housekeeping. I'm smoking my Nording churchwarden. I have a Lane Burley blend. It's doing very well. Drink pairing for today. If you have seen the video I'm going to reference, you'll know what I mean. It's a video that came out in my preparations of doing this devotional that was very motivational to me and inspirational. I watched it several times, and I'm going to put a link in the description. I'd like you to check it out. Drink pairing today would be my choice, the Paler Brother. That comes from a Wordsworth Wild that Padre Piper put out. And when that came out, I had just completed I just posted my contemplations video, The Cost of Conflict. Then that one came out, and I started to see some parallels. And as I got further in my preparation for this particular video, I saw that God works out things to His will and often to His whimsy. And because I had done that contemplations video where I was, in my reading time, I was moved by a piece of literature from the Civil War era that reminded me of let me relight. It reminded me of the cost that we pay in the conflicts that we choose to engage in, whether we win or we lose. I believe in most of the conflicts that could be avoided that we choose to engage in, everybody loses something. That's just the problem with conflict. We see it every single day, and we face it every single day. But it all comes down to the choices that we make. And that reminded me of the line in the sand. In the final hours of the siege of the Alamo, the few defenders were completely surrounded by Santa Anna and his forces. Death was inevitable. They had a cause that they were fighting for. Colonel William Tavis drew out his saber, drew a line in the sand, and asked all those who were willing to fight for their independence to follow him. And this wasn't a situation where they could mull it over and get back to him in a few days. They needed that decision to be made now, because it wasn't going to wait. And every single day we stand before that line, and we have a decision to make. So I decided to choose a line in the sand for this devotional video that I'm taking out of Proverbs. It's going to be out of chapter 15. It's going to be verse 1 through 7. Now Proverbs serves as a complete work on its own, and also each verse stands alone as its own little nugget of wisdom. So I'm going to read the passage real quick, and then I like to break down each one and describe what I get out of that particular verse. And I'm reading out of the King James Version today. There are many great translations of the ancient writings. I like the King James. I like the romantic and poetic nature of the translation, and being an old soul, I believe it suits me just fine. Proverbs 15, starting in verse 1. Our soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. The tongue of the wise useth knowledge aright, but the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. A wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness therein is a breach of the spirit. A fool despiseth his father's instructions, but he that regardeth reproof is prudent. In the house of the righteous is much treasure, but in the revenues of the wicked is trouble. The lips of the wise disperse knowledge, but the heart of the foolish doeth not so. So starting in verse 1, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. We know oftentimes words spoken softly speak louder and resonate longer than harsh words motivated by unkept anger. Starting to see verse 2. The tongue of the wise useth knowledge aright, but the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness. Knowledge in and of itself is not wisdom. Wisdom starts with knowledge. We've heard the phrase, knowledge is power, and that's a true statement. It can be used to build up, or it can be used to tear down. With wisdom, choosing wisdom, knowledge will edify, and that's the goal, I think. Verse 3, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. God is everywhere. We know from being in the world that we know that there's good and there's evil. God sees that there is good and evil. But he also sees us. And I believe that he takes delight in the good, and the good that we allow ourselves to be influenced by. Verse 4, a wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness therein is a breach of the spirit. I'm kind of referred to verse 2. Words and communications you can build or destroy. Breach, in this case, is a brokenness or a disruption. Not in the fact that it limits God from being able to pour out his blessings upon us, but it inhibits our ability to receive. We know we are custodians in this world, and a lot of times God is blamed for the bad things that happen. And what's necessary to think about is we've been placed in this world as a custodian, and so many of those things are things that we have allowed to happen as custodians. I think that's something to keep in mind and take to heart as well. Verse 5, a fool despiseth his father's instructions, but he that regardeth reproof is prudent. Correction is a valuable tool. It's not always pleasant, but we can choose to allow it to aid us in our journey. And we'll be better off for it, I believe. and they're susceptible to problems in the future. In the house of the righteous, this is verse 6, in the house of the righteous is much treasure, but in the revenues of the wicked is trouble. With wisdom, see, we can store up treasure. And with the wickedness, which are the revenues of the wicked, those revenues that are built up by that wickedness are just as soon extinguished, because this world system is greedy, and a lot of times we wind up with less than we started with. Verse 7, the lips of the wise disperse knowledge, but the heart of the foolish doeth not so. Knowledge is acquired by wisdom and is beneficial when used that way. Knowledge, a lot of times with the foolishness and the wickedness is squandered on vanity and the things of wickedness. It doesn't build or edify ourselves or others that we come into contact with. So that's the 7 verses, the passage that I've chosen. But going throughout this entire chapter, I picked out a few other ones along the way that kind of stand alone, and I'm not going to break them down like I did the first 7. I am going to just read them as they are. We're going to go to verse 14. The heart of him that understandeth, the heart of him that hath understanding seeketh knowledge, but the mouth of fools feedeth on foolishness. We go to verse 18. Excuse me for a second. It's hot out here. We'll go to verse 18. A wrathful man stirreth up strife, but he that is slow to anger appeaseth strife. Go to 28. The heart of the righteous studieth to answer, but the mouth of the wicked poureth out evil things. Number 31. The ear that heareth the reproof of life abideth among the wise. And one more, the last verse of the chapter, which I think wraps up the chapter and the point I'm trying to make with this video. The fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom, and for honor is humility. I hope this finds you well and serves to edify you in some way. I know it certainly has been good for me to study this and prepare it, and I hope you got something out of it. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll go ahead and sign off with that. OTC Piper, wishing everybody all the best. Here's to deep devotion and delightfully warm pipe.